Good evening, everybody. My name is Rainer. This is Rainierbooks. This is my booktube channel here on YouTube, and I want to present to you in the next couple of minutes a selection of books that are going to be released or have been released in the beautiful month of June in 2020. New books in June. Let's get started. I have 8 books in this selection, 6 novels and 2 non-fiction books in this month of June that I picked from my different sources where I'm looking after new and interesting books. And the first novel that I'm going to talk about is by an Afro-American author. It's not her debut, it's her second novel. The first novel that she wrote was called The Mothers. It appeared in 2017. It was a huge success. The critics loved it, the audience loved it. I think she sold 110,000 books very quickly, and even Warner Brothers decided to buy the script for a major feature film, which has not been made yet. It has not been released yet, as far as I know. I'm talking about Brit Bennett. Brit Bennett is an author who lives in the beautiful state, the golden state of California. Her second novel has been published on June the 2nd, which was Tuesday this week. It is called The Vanishing Half. It's about 2 sisters, twin sisters, Afro-American twin sisters, born and raised in the American South, who get lost from each other a little bit. It reminds me a little bit from the basic of the story, 2 sisters whose paths are very close in the beginning of their lives and then get lost from each other. It reminds me a little bit of a beautiful novel that I read last year by Canadian author Alex Lean called Dual Citizens. If you haven't read that, it was longlisted for the Giller Prize in Canada, and it's a beautiful read. I just loved it. This is another book about twin sisters by Brit Bennett called The Vanishing Half. 2 sisters. The one sister stays in the South in the United States. The other sister, who has very light skin, moves to California. She marries a white man and lives a very different life than her sister in the American South. And the sister who has remained in the South, she gets pregnant. She gets a daughter who has very dark skin, and while her life, the mother and the daughter's life is defined by race, the other sister almost has escaped her origin and lives a white life in California. The daughters, I think, of both women, of both mothers, make that they are going to meet again. So something happens in the story. This is a very interesting book. It was mentioned by many pages, like Oprah Winfrey had it among the 20 most anticipated books of 2020. It was on the New York Times list of the most interesting books of June, and many other lists of books that were very well expected. That is Brit Bennett's The Vanishing Half. I just want to tell you what the publishers of that novel have said about the book. It's published by I think Riverhead by Riverhead Books in New York, and Riverhead says about this book: looking well beyond issues of race, The Vanishing Half considers the lasting influence of the past as it shapes a person's decisions, desires, and expectations, and explores some of the multiple reasons and realms in which people sometimes feel pulled to live as something other than their origin. That's about The Vanishing Half, which make it a very, very interesting book to me. Another debut in my channel. I hail debuts a lot, and I like debuts a lot from an author who is even on more lists, if possible, than Brit Bennett with The Vanishing Half. It's a debut novel. She came from Calcutta, a major city in India, to the United States. She studied at Harvard, and now she is present with her first novel called A Burning, which takes us back to her native India. Megha Majumdar is a very active author on Goodreads, And I found a quote here on Goodreads, on her Goodreads page, that is very much, could be relevant or could be at least seen in connection to the current situation in the United States with so much unrest and anger after the murder of George Floyd in Minnesota and Minneapolis. Megha Majumdar writes on her Facebook page and this on her Goodreads page, and this is actually a quote from it's a quote from her novel. There it says, "If the police didn't help ordinary people like you and me, if the police watched them die, doesn't that mean," I wrote on Facebook, "that the government is also a terrorist?" That's the quote. And I leave that with you. A Burning is published by Knopf in New York in the United States. It's about three people whose lives get intertwined, three different people from different backgrounds. There is a Muslim girl called Jivan. Something happens on a train, a terrorist attack, and Jivan gets falsely accused for being a terrorist and having committed a terrorist attack on that train. P.T. Sir is a member of a racist or a right-wing party at least, and even his life gets connected to Javan's life because his party can make points by that story. And there is a girl called Lovely, and Lovely is a very nice girl, as the name suggests. She is, her life gets connected to Javan's life because Lovely knows that Javan is innocent because she witnessed something. But if she tells that story and sort of makes Javan an innocent person, then Lovely is going to lose a lot of things that she really cares for. So those three things are intertwined, their lives. And the publisher Knopf says, Majumdar writes with dazzling assurance at a breakneck pace on complex themes that read here as the components of a thriller: class, fate, corruption, justice, and what it feels like to profound obstacles, and yet nurture big dreams in a country spinning towards extremism. And that is mounted to India, where in the past couple of months we have seen a lot of things that are really moving towards extremism. Some of my Indian friends are really very, very worried, and I think the novel of Megha Majumdar, A Burning, is very important for us to read. It's about the second largest country in the world if we look at the population, with far more than 1 billion people. I think we do another debut, all right? So we do another debut, and this time it comes from another woman, from Kyoung Frazier. And her book is published by Doubleday on June 9, and it has a very interesting and beautiful title. It's called Pizza Girl. Pizza Girl. Pizza Girl is a debut from this young woman, this young author, Kyoung Frazier. She has studied at Columbia University. She is living in California, and this book is about an unnamed girl, 18 years old, pregnant, and a pizza delivery driver in the city of Los Angeles, California. And our girl, who is in the center of attention here, she has problems with her mother. She has issues with her boyfriend right now. She is mourning the death of her father, who died a couple of months ago. And she's driving around in Los Angeles and delivering pizza. She's the pizza girl. So that's when she delivers pizza to a woman who is 38, 39 years old, could almost be the mother of Pizza Girl. And these two women, who are very different from each other, are connected. They develop a bond and a very interesting relationship. A very interesting relationship comes into being. The book has, Julia Phillips has said that, Julia Phillips is an author who I loved very much last year with her amazing debut called Disappearing Earth. You should read that if you haven't read that book, Disappearing Earth, which deals with a disappearance of two young girls, two children, on the beautiful exotic island of Kamchatka in very far east Russia. Julia Phillips has said about Pizza Girl that she has blurred. It will make you laugh with one sentence and break your heart with the next. A delicious debut. And delicious as pizza, I'm very curious about reading Pizza Girl by Kyoung Frazier, published by Doubleday on June 9. And here we are with another woman author. I mean, you have already registered that I almost exclusively promote women authors, but that's just, I think that's not on purpose. It's just the way things go when I find interesting books. They're mostly written by women. And this fourth one is written by a woman too. This is by an author who was born in Cameroon in Africa. I think she lives in the United States now. She has studied at Rutgers University, and she has published her first novel a few years ago. The novel was called Behold the Dreamers in 2016, and it won her the PEN/Faulkner Award for fiction. So it was a smashing debut, if you want. And this second novel, Behold the Dreamers, is a book about people who come to the United States, to New York, from Africa, and who have lots of issues and troubles with their new life in America. That's Behold the Dreamers. Her new book that is going to be published on June 16 by Random House is called How Beautiful We Were. How Beautiful We Were. And this takes us back to Africa, where Imbolo comes from. It doesn't take us back to her native country of Cameroon. It takes us to a city that doesn't exist, to a fictitious city called Kozava. And in Kozava, an American oil company is exploiting the earth, exploiting oil. And the earth the grounds are poisoned, and people get sick, and people die from this exploitation of the oil. And the government of the country is not very much interested in what happens in Kozava. They get the money from the American oil company. So the people of Kozava have to try to fight for their rights on their own. That's the book about. They have to do something by themselves. And there's a woman character who's very important for the struggle against both the American oil company and the government of that country where Kozava is situated. Random House says, How Beautiful We Were is a masterful exploration of what happens when the reckless drive for profit, coupled with the ghost of colonialism, comes up against one community's determination to hold on to its ancestral land and a young woman's willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of her people's freedom. That is a recommendation, isn't it? And this is number 4 on my list for new books of June. Imbolo, Mbue, How Beautiful We Were, published by Random House on June 16. And here we are with number 5. And bing bong, the first guy appears, the first man appears. He's almost my age, a couple of years older actually than I am. I'm talking about Irish and Dublin-born author Roddy Doyle, who is publishing his, I think, 7th or 8th novel simply called Love, on June 23 with Viking. Roddy Doyle, he is already an established author. He won the Booker Prize in 1993 for his novel Paddy Clarke, Ha Ha Ha. Paddy Clarke, Ha Ha Ha. It was kind of, some people didn't like the choice of this book back in 93, winning the Booker Prize because they said it was a very popular choice. This book tells the story of Paddy. Paddy is a young boy, he's 10 years old, and somehow Roddy Doyle managed to write this book in the language of a 10-year-old boy. And he is sort of telling about a year in the life of Paddy Doyle in the language of a 10-year-old. And this won the Booker Prize in 93. His new novel is called Love, out by Viking on June 23. And this is dealing with two men called, I think the names are Davy and Joe. Davy and Joe are very old pals, but got moved apart from each other. Davy has moved to England, and Joe is still in the beautiful city of Dublin in Ireland. And they haven't seen each other lately very much, but then the sickness, the fatal sickness of his father drives Davy back to Ireland. He comes from England to Dublin because his father is in a hospice, and he starts meeting Joe again. And Davy and Joe meet, and they are roaming around Dublin at night and during the day, and we have a lot of dialogue in that novel. And we learn the story of both of their lives, and finally also that there is a reason between the two, a secret between the two, and it's a woman, that is the reason for Davy leaving Ireland many years ago and going to England. And this is about how they're making up with that old story. And that sounds very interesting to me. I like Canadian literature a lot. I have said that before. I have talked about Canadian authors, about Emily St. John Mandel, about Kim Etchleen, about I've talked about Canadian authors anyway, and I will continue to talk about Canadian authors, and I always have a look to Canada because that's one of the countries that interests me really a lot. And so my Canadian new book for the month of June 2020 is, and here we have the second man on my list, it's Morgan Murray's debut novel called Dirty Birds that will be published by Breakwater Books on June 29. Breakwater Books, if you want to send that novel to me, you can get my address, write me an email, and I would love to get a hard copy of that beautiful book. Morgan Murray's Dirty Birds is a novel about a man called Milton Ontario who is born in Saskatchewan, and he is living with his parents. He is pretty young in that novel, and he is somehow sort of a loner, a boring kind of guy, but he's totally fascinated by the amazing Canadian icon, singer and songwriter, and nevertheless poet, Leonard Cohen. And the year is 2008. It's the year when Barack Obama becomes president down south in the United States. And Milton Ontario thinks, well, I'm going to leave my parents. I'm going to live a life on my own. I'm going to Montreal and I'm going to meet my Messiah. I'm going to meet Mr. Leonard Cohen. So this book is the electric sexuality of Quebec's Metro City, is named by the publishers. And it says here from Breakwater Books, hilariously ironic and irreverent. In Dirty Birds, Morgan Murray generates a quest novel for the 21st century, a coming-of-age rom-com, crime farce thriller where a hero's greatest foe is his own crippling mediocrity as he seeks purpose in art, money, power, crime, and sleeping in all day. Two of the early reviews that might end up on the cover of the book when it's published, that might have ended up on the cover of the book, have compared the writing of Morgan Murray with the writing of the big and the great American author Kurt Vonnegut, which makes me even more curious to read Dirty Birds, which is published in the end of June, on June 29. And here we are, finally, to arrive at two nonfiction recommendations in my channel. The first one is from a politician. She is a Democrat. She ran for governor in the beautiful state of Georgia in 2018, and she lost. She lost that election to the incumbent Republican Senator Brian Kemp. And some people thought, and even probably Mrs. Abrams thought, that she lost to Mr. Kemp because of imminent and aggressive voter suppression that sort of obstacled and suppressed the votes of thousands, if not tens of thousands, of primarily African Americans. So the book that's coming on June 9 in a few days is called Our Time Is Now by Stacey Abrams. She has written about this issue of voter suppression, and that it is imminent and important to fight against this kind of manipulation and this kind of undemocratic behavior to exclude huge numbers of Afro-Americans, of Latinos or Latinx people from the elections in the United States, of gerrymandering. And Our Time Is Now is a very, very sharp account on that. I read last year a book by I think her name is Carol. Yeah, her name is Carol Anderson. Carol Anderson wrote and published a book in 2018 called One Person, No Vote, about this sort of behavior by democratic parties in the United States, mostly, unfortunately, by the Republican Party, who's trying to oppress the vote of many American citizens, Native American, of people who are Americans and who are not able to vote. Our Time Is Now by Stacey Abrams, a very important book. And now the last but not the least book that I have to talk about in my channel for new books in June is a book by Masha, Gessen, and it's called Surviving Autocracy, and it was published by Riverhead on June the 2nd, on Tuesday this week. Masha Gessen is a non-binary person, and that's why I'm going to use the pronouns they and their. So that's important for you, because otherwise you think he's not capable of speaking English. But Masha Gessen is non-binary, so that's the reason. Masha Gessen is a journalist born in Moscow, and they came to the United States in the early 1990s. And they have written for the New Yorker, they have written for the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, the major and most important, the Atlantic, the most important American newspapers. And Masha Gessen has always got a lot of acclaim for their work. In 2017, Masha Gessen won the National Book Award for their book, The Future is History, How Totalitarianism Reclaimed Russia. And the current book of Masha Gessen is called Surviving Autocracy. And Masha Gessen sees the United States in great danger of losing, of erosion of the democratic institutions of the country, because liberal media and non-Republican media have, from the beginning of Donald Trump's run and then his presidency, always thought that the democratic institutions will look after the process, and there are checks and balances everywhere that are guaranteeing that the United States of America remain a great democracy. But Gessen says that the country was not prepared, and the institutions erode, and there's a great danger of that the United States are sliding towards, more and more sliding towards autocracy. And I'm very curious to read Masha Gessen's Surviving Autocracy, that was published by Riverhead on June the 2nd. Already ordered that book, and I get it in a few days, and I will also try to read as many of my list of new books in June as possible this year. Thank you very much for watching the list, and I hope that one of my 8 books, or 2 of my 8 books, or maybe all of them, will end up on your lists however you are keeping track of the things that you want to read in the future, that you are going to buy at your local independent bookstore if possible. So thank you very much for watching this. The weather is kind of nice out there. I might go out for a walk in a few minutes, but I hope that you subscribe to the channel. And I'm reading right now, that's the information that's important for you. I'm reading right now Angie Cruz's novel Dominicana, that is shortlisted for the Women's Prize of Literature, and which will be given in September to someone. Angie Cruz, I will finish it one of these days. I'm already in the last quarter of the book, and I will give you the review of Dominicana by Angie Cruz on Sunday. Thank you very much now, and have a great day, and bye-bye.